Metanoia's Community Development Corporation is a movement of people rooted in faith. Today, I talk one-on-one with the CEO of Metanoia, Reverend Bill Stanfield, for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Reverend Bill Stanfield, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Good to see you again.
I appreciate it greatly. Obviously, you are the CEO of the Metanoia, which is a nonprofit organization and a community development corporation that is obviously a movement for people rooted in faith. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you, Reverend Stanfield, what's new, what's now right here at Metanoia?
Yeah, great questions. What we are continuing to do, the kind of work we've always done, broadly speaking, Metanoia's sort of fundamental approach is to work alongside communities and people in those communities and ask, well, what's working here and how can we attract investment to that to grow it? And we do that in daily after-school programs and housing construction for affordable housing and sort of support for small businesses, Black-owned businesses on Reynolds Avenue, and economic development projects. And in terms of things that are just going on new within those categories now, in our youth programming, we're doing our daily after-school programming for young people in the community, and we're gearing up for Freedom School, which is a summer literacy program we'll have this summer in partnership with Chicory Elementary School.
Yes.
And we've done Freedom Schools for years, but we haven't done one since the pandemic. So we're pleased to be able to kind of get back to that. We're about 50 students this summer. Wow. We have a good number more affordable housing construction going on right now than we've ever had. We have 18 units of rental housing under construction, and we have another 3 units of, we just sold a home for a first-time home buyer about 2 weeks ago. We have another 2 units that are about to sell, and we've already identified buyers, and we'll be building 6 new units in probably the next 10 months for homeowners on Token Street here in Chicory. Oh, yes. And so that work is keeping us very busy, but it's critical because, as you must be aware, housing costs here in Charleston are really rising very quickly, and there's a lot more interest in a community like this than there might used to be. And so we really see that as a very time-sensitive and urgent work to be able to keep people here in place in the community, because people are here, they're here to live well, and we want to keep that going forward.
Now, with those 18 rental units, how many people actually applied for that?
We will have, those aren't fully online because they're still under construction, but we will have, it's not uncommon for us to have, just for 1 unit of rental housing, 50 to 60 applicants. People are really hungry for quality, good, affordable housing, and because there's just not that much of it. And so I think we'll have a lot of applicants for those units.
So what will it take for you all? Well, let me ask you this, Reverend Stanfield. How many people do you all whittle that down to?
Just the number of people that are, number of units that are available. So people do have to qualify based on their income. They have to be just below a certain amount. And there is an application on Metanoia's website, so if folks are interested, they can go to the housing section of Metanoia's website, and there's an application for our property manager there. You can click on the link and fill it out. Yeah. And as long as folks are, we'll get a certain number of applicants, maybe not everybody's within the income guidelines, and then for folks who are within the income guidelines, we'll sort of start going through on a first-come, first-served basis and evaluate those applications and identify. Unfortunately, we don't have nearly enough housing units available for the number of people that apply. It would be great if we could, but we are only able to do as much as we have funding for. And
So what type of funding do you have now for those 18 units?
We have a variety of sources of funding. From corporate support, we got a $1 million grant from Cummins this year, which is a very strong partner of ours, but most of it comes from governmental support through our rental units are mostly funded through the South Carolina Housing Finance and Development Authority, which is an entity out of Columbia that funds affordable rental housing across the state, really. Mm-hmm. And then we get money from Charleston County and North Charleston that ultimately is money that comes from HUD, so it's federal dollars that flow through the county and the city for affordable housing to build the homeownership housing. And so most of those projects are funded through that, and then we try to identify other sources as well as we go.
So what other sources are you identifying now?
Well, we are looking at possibilities for, we try not to say any source that until it's sort of like the fish is in the boat, we don't talk about the fish being in the water, right? So, but we are in several conversations about being able to continue this work, continue keeping funded. And fortunately, the county's funding cycles and the state's funding cycles, they're on an annualized basis. Right. So every year you can apply for more units. We have a grant application now for the county that to build some additional homes. We haven't heard back. We won't hear back till the summertime probably about that. And so we kind of apply every year and do as many as we can do every year.
That was my next question, Reverend Stanfield. So obviously you want to build these additional units. So where is the land here in North Charleston for that?
For us, we have identified properties, mostly what would be called scattered site, single family lots. So we have been steadily kind of scouting and trying to identify in a community like Chicora or the neighborhoods here, particularly on the southern end of the city. There are a lot of vacant parcels that maybe either what used to be a house there and it was torn down or whatever. And so those are the ones that we try to focus on, because it's when you're doing something called land banking, and we try to acquire land sooner rather than later because it's only getting more expensive.
Yeah.
And so when you're land banking, it's much easier to land bank a vacant lot than it is an abandoned house, because you don't know what could happen in the abandoned house. It's a safety risk, that kind of thing. So we buy mostly vacant land. And we're steadily trying to identify it.
Yes,
and steadily trying to acquire it so that we'll be able to sort of build a pipeline of property to build affordable housing. There are certain parts of the region, maybe downtown the peninsula or some parts of Mount Pleasant, where the land costs have gotten so expensive that even if you put a shed on it, it's hardly going to be affordable, because the lot itself is, $250,000 or something like that. Fortunately, we're not quite in that territory yet, but it's definitely, property values here in this community have grown by 250-300% in the last few years. And so trying to make sure that we stay ahead of that curve, continue to acquire opportunities, property, so that we can continue to build affordable housing, so that hopefully the evolution of a community like this, as investment does show up, it is showing up. We can't sort of keep it at the edge of the neighborhood and not have it happen. It's just the market, it's bigger than us. But hopefully what will happen here will be much more fair and equitable than, for example, what happened downtown, where, many communities in the peninsula were, majority black, and now they're not at all. And as values went up, people got shoved aside and couldn't stay. Many of those people came to North Charleston, and we don't think it's fair that they get shoved aside again. And so how do we stay ahead of that curve and create more opportunities for people to stay, live well here, and not get pushed out, not feel that sense of threat, maybe even benefit from some of the new changes that are coming.
And Reverend Stanfield, you talk about the market being bigger than obviously your organization.
Yes.
So what is the market right now for housing?
Yeah, well, it's very, as a result of sort of the changes at Park Circle and how much property values have gone up there, how much demand there is on property at Park Circle and downtown. And we first started this work in 2002, and there's a lot that is going on now that wasn't going on then. So, the housing market it has its ups and downs, but the bigger trends are pretty strong, and people are increasingly interested in the communities where we work. And that means that's going to drive property values up. I've lived here in Chicora myself since 2003, and I get a lot of interested buyers calling me, sending postcards to my house, and everybody in the neighborhood that owns their home has that experience. We're not selling, and we're trying to make sure that the neighborhood stays more equitable.
Okay, so let me ask you this. So what were the property values, say, 5-10 years ago versus right now?
So, well, I can say, like, 10 years ago, we could acquire a vacant lot in the neighborhood for probably between $5,000 and $12,000, depending on the size of that lot, that kind of thing. Now that same lot is probably going to be between $35,000 and $50,000, and some lots are selling for more than that. And so, so that's, and that kind of percentage increase holds true also in vacant homes. So if a home was once, $80,000, now it might be $250,000, $300,000, or $50,000, now it might be $150,000 or $200,000. And so, so all that is, continuing in that direction, and it's a real challenge to try to stay ahead of that and live within those forces that are much bigger than us. They're people with much deeper pockets than Metanoia has. They're bringing these trends upon the community. But can we stay out ahead of it enough so that we end up with a different scenario here than what has happened in other parts of our region?
So what other trends are you looking at currently?
Well, we're looking at those, trends around housing costs, but also, trends around education. We do work with young people every day and paying attention to what's going on politically with the school district or what's going on within the schools themselves and how are students doing and how can we improve performance of the schools are all sort of critical questions that we want to be asking. But most important for us, I think, is a process of constant listening to, the most important trend makers, if you will, are the residents and families here within the neighborhood. They see things better than anyone else does because they're closest to these issues.
Yeah.
And so our most important kind of trend setters, if you will, are our partners within the community that live in the neighborhood, families we work with every day, people that either rent or buy a home through us. They're telling us what's happening with their young people in a school, what's happening to their housing costs, and all the work that we do really comes out of what they're telling us. That's been true since we got involved in housing at first, back in 2005, because families in our youth programs were telling us this is a critical issue. At the time, it was just how bad the housing was here in the community, how substandard it was in the community. It wasn't as much a threat of rising values, people getting shoved out. It was just people having holes in their home and their landlord not fixing those holes or mold issues. And we still hear that a lot. But now it's got the added layer of the rising costs and that kind of thing.
So what is the typical housing cost here in Chicora, Cherokee?
I'm aware of a home recently that sold for $250,000 just in the last week and a half.
Wow.
And that's probably a home when we first got here would have sold for under $100,000.
Right.
Metanoia, when we build a home, the homes cost us, especially new construction, they cost us quite a bit to build, but we attract grant funding to be able to provide assistance to people to buy their homes. So people are generally able to purchase a home with Metanoia for around $175,000. May go up or down a little bit depending on that person's income. Right. We try to base their monthly payment on their income. But even that has changed a lot. We one time were able to sell homes much more affordably, but our costs, the land, the construction, they're just things we can't control. Wow. And so we have to we put far more into a property money-wise just to get it to $175,000 than we used to get it to $100,000, just because the costs of construction are so much higher now than they used to be.
So what are those new construction costs on your head?
Yeah, well, it depends on the contractor and depends on what else going on, but I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I know they've grown easily by 100%,
wow.
In the last 10 to 15 years. And so costs have kind of doubled, and so that makes it much more challenging.
And you talked earlier about those challenges, including purchasing some of those lots. So let me ask you, what is the percentage increase in this area for those lots?
It would be probably around 150, 200%.
Wow.
So.
And going back to the school district, obviously you're watching that, from your end. So what are those other critical questions that you need answers from the Charleston County School District?
I think, what is the school district's plan to sustainably really work to benefit the lives of students in communities like Chicora? It seems to me, I'm just one person, but it seems to me there's an awful lot of politics within school board, decision making and even rhetoric that doesn't really mirror the reality on the ground of young people in a community like Chicora. And those young people need to be educated in classes that are sustainable, that are the right size to meet their needs. They need to be taught their own history, civil rights history, the history of black people in this country, the history of, which is U.S. history, so they can better understand the circumstance they're in now. And the resistance sometimes nowadays around sort of politicizing history. I was a history major myself in college and value history a lot. And the tendency to politicize certain people's stories so that we maybe don't tell them quite as clearly or as well is a very dangerous thing, I think. And it seems to be a trend among not just our school board, maybe, but other school boards, the State Department of Education, that kind of thing. So those are all things that we're watching and tracking. We're pleased that something like Freedom School, which we offer in summertime, the students get books every week where those books have characters within them that reflect the students' experience. Yeah. They look like the students. They come from neighborhoods like the students. So, because we really believe that education in any place needs to be contextual. In other words, it needs to help young people understand how what they receive in school really can connect to their lived experience in a particular community. And if we only teach lessons that connect with one group of students' lived experience, but not the other group of students, we ought not be surprised when this group of students for whom education isn't connecting gives up on it. And when students give up on education, we're all worse off as a result of that. It hurts the economy, hurts everybody.
So what lessons in history and classroom experience should the school district teach to meet the needs of people in this neighborhood?
Well, as I said, they should be teaching history in a way that helps students build genuine understanding for how a community like Chicora comes to be. And this neighborhood, for example, this is history, was at one point an entirely segregated neighborhood. If you look back at original deeds on homes here in Chicora, you'll see, I've seen it myself on the deeds, to not be rented, sold, or disposed of to persons of African descent. And so this neighborhood was all white at one point, and then there was white flight, and then there was a lot of the homes that were homeowner homes became renter homes, and people sort of pulled out resources. And it's tempting for a young person to look around them when they see that history and think that something's wrong just with them by virtue of living in a neighborhood where things don't seem like they are on TV or whatever. But when you learn the history, you realize, no, there's a bigger picture here that can give me understanding of my circumstance. And once you have understanding of your circumstance, you then have the power to move through it, to understand how to bring change for your family, yourself, your community, our broader region. And so I think those are critical things to be shared.
Now, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, the peninsula itself has been, as many people would say, gentrified, and it's now mostly Caucasian.
Yeah.
Do you see that trend coming towards North Charleston, particularly in this area?
I do. I think that, with rising property values comes interest in the community from folks that look like me, and I think that well-meaning folks of all skin tones ought to be able to admit that just seeing whole populations, whole neighborhoods just sort of steamrolled is not good for any of us. And so that's what we're trying to, but that is what the market will do if the market is left to its own devices. So the market doesn't have any other players in it that are trying to sort of gear things in a better direction. So what we're trying to do is stay ahead of that market a little bit, buy property, own property. When Metanoia, we either sell homes to first-time home buyers. Every home we've sold, with the exception of one, I think, has been to a black family. I think maybe all, if not, I don't have the data right in front of me, but well over 90%, if not all of our rental properties are to black families who may have had ties already to the neighborhood or been within the community. Sure. And so we're trying to keep that diversity, keep that ethic within the neighborhood itself. We can't, by law, restrict housing strictly along the lines of race, but we do want to recognize that race, unfortunately, for a long time, housing was restricted along the lines of race, in that African Americans in this country were denied home loans or denied being able to live in certain places. And so if we're going to move towards correcting that, we also have to build intentional solutions that address that history and those populations to build more opportunities for those communities. And so, even when we rent a home, it's not as, folks aren't building equity for themselves, but we're taking that money and we're able to reinvest it in making sure those properties are well taken care of, whereas sometimes landlords rent a home that live outside the neighborhood and they don't reinvest the money. The property just goes downhill over many years, and they don't reinvest in the property. So
how do you build up equity now?
Either an individual homeowner can build equity by owning their own home and paying it off, or you can build equity by building, acquiring property, attracting funding to it, and then you're building community equity, because Metanoia, I work for Metanoia. I don't own Metanoia. I work for a board of directors, many from the neighborhood, and those folks control. They say whether I stay or go, and they control that investment, those assets. Okay. And as we've done more housing, those assets have grown, and as those assets grow, our capacity to do more good when the community grows. Okay. And but also the work of tending those assets is a real work. It takes money as well. And so all that kind of builds equity either at the individual family level or at the organizational community level as well.
So let me ask you, how many homes has Metanoia bought and actually still owned today?
Right now, I don't have that number in front of me, but it's a little over 40 units of housing that we own and rent today. And that'll be going up in the next year because we have 18. That doesn't include the 18 we have under construction right now. So, that's a big amount. That portfolio has grown over the years, and tending to it and making sure that our properties are well run and well operated, and that they really benefit families is critical work of ours. And it takes time, energy, and effort itself. And not to be like extractive, like a lot of property owners are in the community, where you just sort of buy the property, rent it, and take all the money and don't put it back in the neighborhood. We sort of try to do the opposite of that. And so as we grow that portfolio, we grow the ability to also invest in the community and grow safe places for people to stay in a place, be here and be well.
Absolutely. So how many African American people actually own houses under Metanoia?
Well, we've, a homeowner, it wouldn't be right to say they own houses. They would have bought homes from Metanoia.
Right, that's right.
They're not under Metanoia in any way, shape, or form. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I would say it's probably 14 or so, 15 black families have bought homes through Metanoia.
And how many of those people actually rent some of your homes?
If they're a homeowner, they're no longer renting. Right. We just had a homeowner in the past week and a half that actually was a renter with us, and she was able to migrate to being a homeowner, which is a great scenario because we literally love to be able to have all of the people that rent from Metanoia sort of get their credit straightened out, get things figured out. Not everybody, we do rental because if we want people to stay in the neighborhood, not everybody's ready to own a home yet. They don't have their credit score where it needs to be, maybe their income needs to be a different place. Mm-hmm. So if those families, but there are plenty of families that can't get a mortgage, but they're able to contribute to the community. They deserve not to be swept aside. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we do rental property as well, and to sort of create a place for those families while they prepare themselves to buy their own home. We haven't had a ton of people move from rental to home ownership, but it is a goal for sure.
So what other goals do you have in that sense?
In what sense do you mean?
Moving most of those renters to actually homeowners.
Yeah. So I think whenever it works for the renter and it can work for us, for a long time when Metanoia first started building housing, all we built was homeownership housing. And then the real estate crisis happened in 2008, and people just flat out couldn't get qualified for mortgages to buy homes. And so we had to convert a couple homes we had for sale to rent, and we did just nothing but rent for a while because people just couldn't get qualified to buy homes. Now people are getting qualified, so it's sort of we're just entering a territory now where people can get qualified. And so we have, I think, work to do. We'd love to be able to, say, with more regularity, a person who rented with us was able to eventually purchase their home. We have to work with families and build more sort of structures in place to allow them to do that. We have partners, Urban League, Mortgage in South Carolina, that help people with homeownership education and get credit counseling and that kind of thing. We can point people towards, but we'd like to get more intentional ourselves about helping people on that pathway.
Going back to 2008, so how many homes that you actually converted?
Only, you mean, so they were for sale and we couldn't sell them, so I think it was just a couple, 2, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that the case still today or no?
No. I mean, we don't, we are now building homes. If we have to convert a home, we could, but we haven't had to convert a home in 3 or 4 years to rental. So far, all the homes we built recently, we just finished 3. We sold 1 a couple weeks ago. We have the other 2 under agreement now. We have identified buyers for them. And so we anticipate those homes selling in the next 30 or 45 days. And so the trend seems to be going in a positive direction for people to be able to get qualified if they have, decent credit, but not perfect credit, but decent credit and a steady income. Folks can get qualified, I think, now.
And how many more buyers do you have to identify?
Depends on how many homes we build. So in the next year, we'll be building 6 homes here in Chicora for home ownership. So we have to identify 6 buyers within that year's time. And so we work with folks to do that.
And where exactly are your properties here in the North Charleston area?
They're scattered throughout most of them, the vast majority of them are within Chicora and Ackaby and Union Heights. With most of the ones that are under development now are here in Chicora. We've acquired some property for future affordable housing development of the neighborhoods too, and we have a project in Liberty Hill in partnership with a family there in Liberty Hill. It's a long-time family and a cute family in Liberty Hill. It's going quite well. That's an 8-unit apartment sort of townhome complex, Golden Dream Apartments. So it's sort of wherever we find opportunities within the southern half of the city of North Charleston.
And how many people are going to move into this apartment in those apartments in Liberty Hill?
There'll be 8 families.
Yes, sir.
So we don't know. It depends on how many members there are in each of those families, for how many people. But it'll be 8 households.
Wow. And what will the rent be for that?
Those units are set at different levels. They're I believe. I want to say in that 8 units, there's 2 or 3 3-bedroom apartments, 2 or 3 2-bedrooms, a couple of 1-bedroom apartments. I can't quite remember the breakdown, but it goes from the rents are based on, for all of this housing, are based on the area median income of people and how that compares. So most of the homeownership housing, for example, is based on people earning 80% or less of the area median income. It changes for the household size. So for a family of 4 people, that area median income is right around $69,000 to $70,000 a year. So a family can qualify if they make less than that. Lots of families making less than that in our region. But some of those apartments in Golden Dream and Liberty Hill are for people earning 50% of the area median income. So it's much lower. So they can actually, the monthly prices are lower, but people have to sort of make below a certain amount to qualify.
So would that be between 800 and 1,000?
Yeah, some of the apartments, some of the smaller apartments in Liberty Hill are less than 800.
Oh, okay.
But some of the larger ones would be more like 800,000. That's right.
So when you come back here to Chicora, Cherokee, Reverend, what is the area median income here?
Gosh, the average income in Chicora is probably kind of right around $30,000.
Okay.
So, it is very hard to build housing. We recognize that even for many people, even what gets called affordable housing, because it is more affordable than what the market can deliver, it's still not affordable to an awful lot of families. And we as a community, as a society, sort of have to figure out what we're going to do with that. Like when Metanoia is small, we don't have unlimited resources to be able to get prices down super low. But that's what you would need to do in order for some families at the income level they're making here in Chicora to be able to either own their own home or really truly rent a property that they can afford. So that's a work in progress. We recognize that not everybody that might look at an affordable housing price would say, "Oh, that's affordable to me." It's more affordable than what the market is going to provide, but it may still not be affordable to everybody, and that's too bad. And we have to all sort of be thinking about that and working with that.
So in your mind, Rev, what is it? Is it affordable housing? Is it attainable housing?
I don't really care what we call it. I think that some people say maybe affordable housing has a connotation. I know many people live in the housing that we rent.
Yes.
They're fantastic people. I have none of those connotations myself. Sometimes we get, to me, it's sort of like the same thing as getting hung up on what we call history at the school board elections. It's politicizing people and people's stories and what people really need to be successful. And the less we can do that, the better. So if people want to call it attainable, if people want to call it affordable, my concern is that we're building it and we're delivering it at a price that people can actually afford. Or attain, whatever they want to call it. But that's what really matters the most. And so I think sometimes, folks want to use the term attainable to get away from maybe connotations from affordable. If that works to deliver more housing that people can actually get into at a price that works for them, that's fine with me. But it shouldn't be used in a way that diminishes the families that do need this housing, because those families are working hard, playing by the rules. The people that rent with Metanoia or buy homes with Metanoia, they're fantastic families. They don't deserve to be sort of stereotyped and looked at negatively.
And how many families need your type of housing right now?
Well, the Chamber of Commerce did a study a few years ago, and that said we need to be bringing online every year for the number of people in the region and the incomes in the region, like over 2,000 units of housing. So that's how you see how we're getting 100 applications for one unit, because we're not approaching anywhere near the scale that we truly need to approach to be able to. A housing economy should work like a regular economy, where if you want to buy a car, there are more affordable cars, there are expensive cars, and everything in between. But because of other restrictions, our housing economy doesn't work that way. It should be supply and demand. You increase the supply and demand, pricing goes down. But we have a lot of restrictions on increasing the supply. People saying, "Oh, we don't want density," or "We don't want to build more apartments here," and that drives up the cost for everybody. And so, being able to kind of address those issues as a region is something we're partners with the Chamber of Commerce, other groups, to be able to get more local funding for affordable housing, because we really don't have any, unless you're in the city of Charleston, Charleston County, North Charleston doesn't have any local funding source for affordable housing. To wed with the federal money that comes to town for affordable housing, but also pursue smart and solid policies around things like density, around things like mass transportation. We have a great opportunity in the bus rapid transit line. It's supposed to go up and down Rivers Avenue, right by the community here. To increase that line needs more density all around it to make sure it's sustainable from an economic standpoint, and it's a great chance to provide that density in a way, hopefully, that people can live in housing they can afford. They can hop on that thing and ride either to Somerville jobs or downtown jobs at a price they can afford, and it could be a great regional opportunity to make our community more equitable.
And with the density, what are those current restrictions for your organization when building these houses?
Well, if a lot is within a municipality or the county, it's going to generally have zoning on it. Right? It's going to be zoning either R1 for a single-family house or R2 for multifamily housing. And depending on the size, there are other, cities impose restrictions. It really depends on the size of the lot and where the lot is and that kind of thing in terms of what can be built on it.
Wow. And so what is the per capita income right now in North Charleston?
That's a good question. I do not know that myself. So I think it has gone up because of all the changes, in other parts of the city, particularly. But I don't know that answer myself.
And currently, what is the per capita, consumption right here in the city of North Charleston?
I don't know. I know that North Charleston, the city government talks oftentimes about how there's more sort of business in North Charleston than other parts of the area, and so people oftentimes drive to North Charleston to buy stuff and then drive home somewhere else. But I don't know the exact answer to that.
And I know you talked a lot about land in this particular interview. So what is the public revenue from land value capture here in North Charleston?
That's a good question as well. That'd be a question for the city, I think, in terms of what the revenue of the city might own, tax revenue, if that's what you're talking about.
And going back, obviously, to Metanoia, so obviously you need a lot of money to build some of these houses. So what are your annual budget appropriations?
Well, so we budget differently for operating. So there's an operating budget, which is what it costs to run youth programs, even what it costs from a staffing standpoint to support this housing work. And then there's a capital budget, which is different than an operating budget. The capital budget is how much money goes into the actual property itself. And so we're actually doing our budget right now for next year. Our fiscal year starts in July. So it depends on and I think Metanoia's budget this upcoming year will be about $1.5 million, $2 million or so for all the programming we do, and then there'll be a separate capital budget, depending on the housing that we build. Right. The project in Liberty Hill, I believe, is around $4 or $5 million, something like that. But that's all going directly into the project itself. It doesn't go into our business.
Right.
And so construction costs.
Oh yeah.
So it really depends on the operating budget stays at around $1.5 million, $2 million a year, but the capital budget may go up or down depending on how many projects we have. Right now, Metanoia's capital budget this year will be quite high because we have a lot of construction going on this year. We won't have as much construction going on next year. just because of the way sort of cycles work and funding and that kind of thing. So our capital budget will go down some next year. But
So what are those other capital projects?
well, they're just in the coming year, the capital projects will be these 6 new homes. We'll be wrapping up. We'll still be wrapping up the current projects we're doing right now. And of course, we also have a long-term goal of the renovation of the old Chicora Elementary School, which we were about to close on all the financing and start construction of. It caught fire back in Hawaii back in 2020.
Right.
We had bound insurance for that property, and we're in what's become a pretty lengthy engagement around making sure we get a just payment from the insurance company. I can't. Now that's with court and attorneys. I can't say much more about that right now, but we still are very optimistic about that project and still want to hold on to it. And so when that comes online, that'll be a $25–30 million project.
Wow.
And so it'll have to sort of be pieced together because it's been so long since we've worked on it, other than the insurance thing. But we still are very committed to it.
And I know earlier you talked about obviously local funding. So what percentage of the community development block grant funds have you received over the past 2 years?
I don't know what percentage of the overall community development block grant funds that you want to find that out from the county. Okay. I know we have received community development block grant funds. I don't know what the overall pie is. I know we got a slice of it.
Sure.
So I know we've received community development block grant funds. Actually, mostly home funds. What are called home funds, which are a different spot, still federal money to build the new homes we have on Quintin Street, and also to run some of our youth business education stuff, and also do repairs for. We also do repairs for homeowners on a fixed income that can't afford to make repairs to their homes. So we've used money from the city to do all that work.
So how many repairs have you made in the past year?
In the past year, we've probably made around 10 to 12 in terms of finishing projects. We were a little delayed because of COVID, and COVID was an area, because a lot of our repair recipients are for older folks. We're particularly careful about having contractors go in their homes and that kind of thing during COVID. So we had a real slowdown in that work around COVID, but we have picked it up. We're fortunate right now to have a grant from Cummins where we've been able to identify. We'll do another probably 10 to 15 units this year of repairs. We're called essential emergency repairs for residents in the community, where we just repair one system, like a roof or a HVAC system, if they really need it, all within the 29405 zip code.
Okay, so demographics. What are those demographics for people buying houses from Metanoia, and what are the demographics for people renting from you?
Well, people have to make below a certain income to buy a home or to rent from us. I don't have all the demographics right in front of me, but I do know that all the families that we have rented or sold a home to, with the exception of one, have been Black families through the years. And I don't have other information from me.
Oh, no worries. And how many homes in North Charleston have Metanoia been able to purchase under your organization's name?
So right now we have, we finished about a little over 40 units of housing for rental, and we've done another probably 12 or so for home ownership, 12 to 15. If I had known we were going to have this many numbers, I would investigate all this stuff. So I'm getting all this ballpark numbers here. And then we have these about 24 under construction, and then we have another sort of 17, 20 lots that we have land banks that will be future affordable housing construction. So what does all that add up to? They're probably 60, 70, 80 units overall. And yeah.
And when it comes to those vacant and obviously tax delinquent properties, what are your focus zones with that?
We mostly acquire property within the 29405 zip code, because that's always been where our focus has been, and it's also where the property still is. It's all relative these days, but it's still more affordable than a lot of other communities. So.
And what other communities are affordable, and which ones aren't right now in North Charleston?
Well, they're all becoming less affordable, but we do, I think, still have a window of opportunity here in the sort of southern half of the city to be able to build in affordability for more families. And so, people can find out as they look at the pricing for rents or home buying, kind of where those properties are, those communities are. But we feel like, within the southernmost neighborhoods here of the city is where you have the highest opportunity still for affordability. And so we're trying to make that a little more permanent for families.
Now, going back to the land bank, Mr. Reverend, do you have a list of properties that could be considered for acquisition from a land bank standpoint?
All these properties that we own are restricted for future affordable housing.
Okay.
So we have some partners, land trusts that we have donated some properties to. We have some partners that might be able to get some of those properties, but they're not for sale, sort of like to the general public, because they were bought with money to be able to build affordable housing. And so until we could guarantee that whatever is going to be built on those lots is affordable, that we wouldn't try to sell them. And we'd also have to sort of get approval from the other partners that have helped us acquire those lots as well, to help fund them and that kind of thing.
And how many properties have been donated to you all?
Not that many, not as many as I would like. I'd say, like in our whole 20-year history, we may have had 3 to 5 properties donated to us. Huh. So, that's great. When occasionally, every once in a while, maybe a bank might have a vacant property they might donate to us, or somebody's family, this property's in their family, and that somebody passed away, and they just don't want to deal with this property selling it. And they like what we do, so they might donate it to us. But yeah.
And would you in the future, Reverend Stanfield, actually implement a lease to purchase program?
We'd love to do that. There are some restrictions around being able to do that with regard to the funding sources we use. So we sort of joke around here that we do try to obey the golden rule, the one in the Bible, do for others what you haven't do for you. Sure. But we also have to obey the other golden rule, which is one who holds the gold makes the rules. Yeah. And in this case, the federal funding we steward, we have to sort of vet. We have vetted in the past, and those who have provided that funding haven't really been encouraging of doing the lease purchase possibility. But we would like to, we are very sympathetic to that idea, and would like to sort of continue keeping it alive and seeing maybe one day our funding sources will sort of change their tune on it. So we'll see.
And going back, obviously, to the areas here in the city of North Charleston, what areas of the city have you all actually indicated as far as changing neighborhood dynamics that would actually threaten that type of affordability?
I think that's true in every neighborhood in North Charleston. I sort of wish that wasn't so, but I think that's true in every neighborhood in North Charleston.
Wow.
Union Heights, just to the south of us, has homes that are selling now, new homes being built by other folks that are selling for $250,000, $300,000, and so I think that's true in every community, which is that much more why this is urgent work, to be able to preserve the opportunity for people to stay in the community at a price that it works for them and their families. And so
what are the strong and weak housing submarkets here in the city?
I don't track overall sub-market trends. I just know what's going on in our neighborhood. There are probably other neighborhoods where they're stronger or weaker. I know in these communities there's a lot of demand that wasn't there. I'll just say it wasn't there. When we first started work in housing at Metanoia, we might call about acquiring a vacant property, and we probably were the first one to call that property owner in 15, 20 years. And now that property owner has been contacted by multiple people within the last 2 or 3 weeks about selling their property. So there's a lot of speculation.
In this area, Shakur Cherokee, for instance, how many people have actually sold their houses?
I don't have that data either. We've been fortunate. Most of the homeowners through Metanoia, we had a couple people sell, which is their right to do, but most people have not sold. Chicora has more renters than, say, Union Heights or Acabee, the 3 southernmost neighborhoods of the city. Yeah. So I would just, anybody that lives in those communities that's listening to this, don't sell your home. Don't sell your home. Hold on to that home. There's a reason why people want to buy it. It's because they're going to make money off of it. You and your family should make that money off of that. And so don't sell your home unless, especially if you don't have a real clear other option to live in. No matter how big the check might be for what you paid for it originally, if it's not a big enough check to let you go buy something else, don't sell it. until you have some clear options ahead of you. And so it's really important, I think, for people to stay in their homes if they can.
And lastly, Reverend, how is your organization assisting in providing land, viable, market rate investment, especially developments incorporating an affordable housing component to it?
Well, all the housing we build is affordable. Is more affordable than what the market does. So we don't do any market rate housing whatsoever. The market, we find, will take care of that. You know, the market, especially nowadays, the market is very in play here in Chicora and in North Charleston, more broadly speaking, and it is active and it is selling. So because that's going to be taken care of, we focus on building, and we do this sort of also with commercial development.
Yes,
and we have renovated several buildings for Black entrepreneurs on Mills Avenue, and we're trying to provide that space to those entrepreneurs at a price they can afford. And even as property values go up, the traditional thing to do would be to drive those rents up. And our goal is to really support those business owners and to keep them in those properties at a price they can continue to afford, so it can be successful for them and their families and also the community.
So how many Black-owned businesses are wanting to move into the Reynolds Avenue corridor here?
Well, we have, depending on sort of we have Daddy's Girls Bakery now, and then in the creative realm, which is actually two entrepreneurs working in the same space. Yeah. And we have had a partnership with Mr. Narwhals, there's a snow cone company there on Reynolds, and so in that cafe space we own on Reynolds, and we own another building on Reynolds. So we're trying to think about how we can continue to support small Black businesses. I don't know how much, I can't answer broadly how much demand, because there may be people out there that do want to move to Reynolds that I don't know about, so I can't give you a number for that, but I do know interest on that street is increasing, and so our goal is to do with the same way from an economic development standpoint what we've done with housing, which is to say, okay, how do we keep this street so that on at least a good portion of it, their entrepreneurs are able to stay in place, live well, be here, that are reflective of this neighborhood. Black entrepreneurs, and the folks that we work with on Reynolds are great about. They mentor kids that come to Metanoia after school programs in entrepreneurship. The students will go over and spend an afternoon with them once a week and learn about their businesses, and which they can really teach a lot to those students just by watching and observing. So they really benefit the community, and our goal is to make sure that even as values go up, they're able to stay and enjoy the success of whatever happens to come.
So what is the property value on Reynolds Avenue?
It would depend on the building, it would depend on any number of things, but it has gone up similar to what the residential values have gone up over the years.
And so what is the typical rent for those people down there?
It depends on the building and that kind of thing. I would not want to put out in the public what people that rent from Metanoia like rent for, but we try to make those situations beneficial. But it also depends on sort of the size and square footage and all those kinds of things in terms of what people are paying per square foot for rent.
To be continued.
Lots of things are going on.
Absolutely. Well, Metanoia CEO, Reverend Bill Stanfield, thank you for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin School House.
Yeah, thank you for your work and all you do. So
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.